Many years I was a racist. And I didn't like blacks. I used to call me N-word and whatnot. And now I come a point and realize there's some personal experiences. White people are racist. Not all of them. But white culture is. Our white country is. Our nation is. Our American culture is full of white supremacy. And we live in a white supremacist culture that caters to white people. Everything from the media to education to art to culture to politics is whitewashed. What is not whitewashed?
Look at these telling images from a Jewish synagogue in Syria. They were painted in the 3rd century, less than 200 years from the time of Jesus. They're the earliest pictures of Jewish people in the world, and fashions back then changed slowly.
The kind of hairstyle that you get, it's short, it's curly, it's, if you like, afro in style, and this seems to be almost uniform in the way that Jesus is depicted there. It's unlikely that Jesus' skin tones were white in the traditional, as you get it in much of the traditional art, as you get it in Hollywood Jesus's. It's more likely he had darker skin tones, and he's much more likely to have looked something like this.
Jesus was not white, he was a black man. And a lot of people do not know this, man, because this is just a lie that's been going around. And I know preachers read this stuff, but they don't want to talk about how Jesus was black. They don't want to talk about how Jesus had a rejecting image. They don't want to talk about that. They want to make Jesus white. You can't make Jesus white. He wasn't white. You can't make Jesus white. You can't. You can't make Jesus Japanese. You can't make Jesus Chinese. You can't make Jesus Mexican. Jesus was black. He was black. When he walked the world, he was a black man. And I got proof to back this stuff up. I'm in the book of Revelation, chapter 2, verse 18. And it says, "And to the angel of the church in Thyatira write the words of the Son of God," the words of the Son of God, "who has eyes like a flame of fire, and whose feet are like burnished bronze." Man, I just proved to you people, I had tons of scriptures on that. Burnished bronze, man. Whose feet are like burnished bronze. I mean, and then right here, Revelation chapter 1, verse 13, I read it to you already. "And his feet like unto fine brass, as if they burned in a furnace." What happens to something when it burns up? It turns black. Put stuff in a fireplace, it turns black. Burnished bronze. Like if they were burned in a furnace. He was black, man. Jesus Christ was not white. He was a black man. And I know I'm probably offending a lot of you people out there. Well, I can't accept this, Patrick. Well, you better start accepting. You better start. Because he was not white. He was a black man. Seriously. Man, this is deep. I used to think Jesus was white. I didn't know he was black. And the preachers know this stuff too. They don't want to say this stuff. They don't want to offend anybody. But I'm not here to be accepted by the world. I'm just here to tell the truth, man. I'm telling the truth, man. I mean, come on, man. Just tell the truth, man. But anyways, man, I just wanted to show y'all that Jesus was not white. He was a black man. I love you people. And I hope this video blessed y'all. And I just, this stuff is really real, man. It's not a game. It's not no Looney Tunes story, man. This stuff is real, man. We are in the last days. I mean, time is running out. I mean, God's word, it's really, really true, man. It really, really is, man. Time is running out. But anyways, man, I love you people, and I'll see y'all later.
Grandfather was the one of the founding fathers of the state of Israel.
Yes, he was.
Tell us about this.
Yes, he was. The generation of my grandparents was the generation of the first Jews to take on Zionism as an ideology and take on this idea of establishing a Jewish homeland in Palestine. And he was very active. He became a leader within the movement. He was a member of the de facto Jewish government before the State of Israel was established. And he was one of the signers on the Declaration of Independence when the State of Israel was established.
Okay, and then from there, your father actually, he was the general.
My father was, yes, both my parents were born in Palestine, so they were the first generation Israelis, if you will, first generation Jews who were born there.
I just had a rabbi give me an analogy. He said, look, imagine you left your home and then someone came and occupied it, and then you try to get it back, and then they went to the judge. Have you heard some of these analogies? Maybe you can.
Yeah, that's assuming that, that's taking it into a place which I don't usually go. That's making the assumption that today's Jews are really the descendants of the ancient Hebrews that used to live in that part of the world some 3,000 years ago. That's a bit of a stretch for me. And even if it was true, I don't think it. I agree with him. It doesn't justify. I did not live there 3,000 years ago. My grandparents immigrated from Ukraine. Their parents, their grandparents didn't live there. And I don't know any Jew that can trace his or her ancestors back to the ancient Hebrews. So that's a lot of, that's a lot of myth there.
But they claim they want to build the temple. Now, I want to discuss a little bit of sensitive history. And if I go to sensitive history, well, then I must quote sources that say it rather than that I say it. This is a fascinating book, and the web pages are there. You can check it out. Facts are facts. This is a book that was written by a Jewish man. And he confronted the thinking of many of the high-placed individuals of the world. This is interesting stuff. In this book, Benjamin H. Friedman, a Jewish man, writes about the Jews and reveals an interesting history. He states that the present Jews in Palestine are not the true descendants of the Judeans, but rather descendants of the Khazars. In the letter addressed to D. David Goldstein of Boston, Massachusetts, a convert to Catholicism, the author, Benjamin Friedman of New York City, dated October 1954, provides some fascinating insights. This is in the public domain. Let's study this for a while and see where we get. Benjamin H. Friedman claims that the word Jew was only introduced into the English language in the 18th century, and that Jesus referred to himself as a Judean and not as a Jew. Inscribed upon the cross when Jesus was crucified were the Latin words Iesus Nazarenus Rex Iodeorum, which means Jesus of Nazareth, ruler of the Judeans. Now this is fascinating. I went and checked it, and it is so. Yes, it happens to be so. Now the word Jew today has a religious as well as a political connotation. You think of a Jewish entity, a government, but you also think of their religion incorporated at the same time, whereas the term Judean is a geographic connotation. It's a geographic. It doesn't incorporate the religion. It's where he came from. He was from Judah. He was a Judean. He further writes, the form of religious worship known as Pharisaism in Judea in the time of Jesus was a religious practice based exclusively upon the Talmud. The Talmud in the time of Jesus was the Magna Carta, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, all rolled into one, of those who practiced Pharisaism. The Talmud today occupies the same relative position with respect to those who profess Judaism. So the rituals and rites that many of them observed were based on the Talmud and not on the Torah. Rabbi Morris, this is all from this source, Rabbi Morris in Kotzer wrote a most revealing and comprehensive article with the title, What is a Jew?, which was published as a feature article in Look magazine in June 17, 1952 issue. In that article, Rabbi Morris Kurtzer evaluated the significance of the Talmud to Judaism today. In that illuminating treatise and that important subject, by the most qualified authority at the time, Rabbi Morris N. Kurtzer stated, the Talmud consists of 63 books of legal, ethical, and historical writings of the ancient rabbis. It was edited 5 centuries after the birth of Jesus. It is a compendium of law and lore. It is the legal code which forms the basis of the Jewish religious law, and it is, note, the textbook used in the training of rabbis. So rabbis are trained according to the Talmud, and the Talmud has very little in common with the Bible. As to the origin of the present Jews in Palestine, he states that those Jews derived from Eastern Europe, and many of the Jews that today live in the reconstituted state of Israel come from Eastern Europe, are not descendants of the Judeans or the lost tribes of Israel, but rather descendants of the Khazars. Who were they? They were a nation most people do not even know of. He writes, the so-called self-styled Jews in Eastern Europe in modern history cannot legitimately point to a single ancient ancestor who ever set even a foot on the soil of Palestine in the era of Bible history. Research also revealed that the so-called or self-styled Jews in Eastern Europe were never Semites, are not Semites now, nor can they ever be regarded as Semites at any future time by any stretch of the imagination. What secret, mysterious power has been able for countless generations to keep the origin and the history of the Khazars and the Khazar kingdom out of the history textbooks? Did you ever learn about it at school? I never learned about it. And out of classroom courses in history throughout the world, the origin and the history of Khazars and the Khazar kingdom are certainly incontestable historical facts. You have to do some cross-checking. Even the Jewish Encyclopedia is quite explicit about it. This was the Khazar kingdom. Here is the Black Sea, the Byzantine Empire. Here was Persia. And here was the kingdom of the Khazars. It was a massive kingdom. Now let's look at some of this interesting history. The Khazars were an Asiatic nation. And the Jewish Encyclopedia states Persian origin that converted to Talmudic Judaism. And that had conquered a vast area of Eastern Europe, which was in turn later conquered by the Russians in the 10th and 13th century. So that is why there are so many Russian Jews. Have you ever thought where they came from? Did they escape from Palestine? Were they the lost 10 tribes? Did they emigrate to Russia? No. This is a totally different nation that accepted Talmudic Judaism. He writes, after a historic session with representatives of the 3 monotheistic religions, King Bulan, 7th century, decided against Christian and Islam, because Islam had just arisen, and selected as the future state religion the religious worship then known as Talmudism, and not known and practiced as Judaism, which was totally different, which was based on the Bible. They adopted the Hebrew alphabet, and the Khazars adapted words to their requirements from the German, the Slavonic, and the Baltic languages. This language was known as Yiddish. And Yiddish used the Hebrew alphabetic characters, but not Hebrew. It's not Hebrew. It's Yiddish. I've always wondered, when I hear them speaking Yiddish, I understand quite a few words. Why? Because I'm German. They had many exchanges with universities and their students were trained. So here is another nation which had occupied this area, and they had adopted this religion and brought rabbis in and trained the people, but they were not Judean.
Stop being defensive.
Hi, shalom, shalom from Israel. This is Ola, the daughter of Jethro. And I just heard that you black people that was stolen from Africa to America, that you don't know who you are. But you are the children of Yahweh, the children of Israel. And I'm telling you, you have to come back to your homeland, here to Zion, to Jerusalem, because us the Gentiles, we do need you. We need you to come and pray, because you are our saviors. You're the one that was chosen by Yahweh to live in this land, not the Jewish people, it's you. You were stolen from Africa, they deceived you, they told you that you are slaves, but you actually the children of Israel. And it's time just to come back. Come for your people, come back for us, come back for the whole Gentiles, because only you gonna save us. So please come back.
Like, you acknowledge who the real Israelites are, huh?
So let me ask you this. Look at this right here. Tell them what you're doing, David, Brother David.
I'm just a minister for the Lord, and these are the actual Israelites, ancient Israelites, depicted in Egypt, tomb walls. These are Assyrian captives. I believe these are probably Levite priests because their hair is cut a certain length.
Look at those black images.
Locks.
Look at those black images. Who's that? Daniel wrestling with that lion? With that black skin and woolly hair?
I don't know. I wonder if that's maybe a man in an early Christian in a Colosseum.
No, that's David. They said he wrestled with lions.
Okay. Well,
hey, but look, let me ask you this. Who are the Israelites, right? You see that?
The ancient Israelites are those people that were taken into slavery through Atlantic slave trade and scattered through all nations.
We've given your people a God that looks like me, so that you don't have any qualm about bowing down to me. See, because this is the image of God. I don't know of any sin that we've committed that's greater than that one. And we did it with the Bible in our hands when we were beating your ancestors for looking at us eye to eye. And we're quoting to them from this scripture. Even if we allowed them to have their own ministers, which there wasn't many of because we didn't allow them to read. But if we said, okay, you can have your church. This is my plantation. I'm going to do what I want with it. You can have your church. But then spies were sent. And those spies would stand outside the church, and that man would be beaten, perhaps killed, if he preached anything other than 3 sermons. And those 3 sermons were turn the other cheek, obey your master, and it's going to get better one of these days. God's going to take care of all of it. You're going to be in a happy, happy land. So put up with what you're putting up with now. And we made your people preach that to your people. And it's still being done. It's still being done. Those are the sermons that your people hear. Those sermons are what causes your people to comfort me when I do something that's wrong.